Justin Hicks, my 27-year-old son, on the podcast. Welcome, Justin.
Hey, what's going on? How's it?
So this is like a reveal for the internet and the world and the fans and whatever, and people that I know I'm going to share this video link to, and a shit ton of people don't know that I have a son that's 27 years old. So I'll let you take because you got involved with my cousins and stuff first before I ever got looped in, and it was all started with 23andMe. All right, welcome to the Knight's Path podcast number 12. This one is a must-see, okay? I have an amazing, I love all my guests up to this point. We've had 11. This is my 12th one. I was kind of in the back of my head saving the 12th one for this person. This person's not like any guest I've ever had before. This person is my blood. He is my relative. And those of you that know me, you know I have, and I'm saying he, right? You know I have a wife, you know I have a daughter. So when I say he, it can't be one of them. I do have a brother. Is it him? I do have two nephews that are male. Is it one of them? No, it's Justin Hicks, my 27-year-old son, on the podcast. Welcome, Justin.
Hey, what's going on? How's it?
So this is like a reveal for the internet and the world and the fans and whatever, and people that I know I'm going to share this video link to, and a shit ton of people don't know that I have a son that's 27 years old. So I'll let you take because you got involved with my cousins and stuff first before I ever got looped in, and it was all started with 23andMe.
Yeah, I know. So this isn't sponsored by 23andMe yet, but it's yeah, no, it was great. I had downloaded 23andMe in I think it was early 2019 or something around there, and had gotten it. Really was just curious more about like my bloodline and that kind of thing. Raised single mother, never knew who biological was, and kind of accepted that early on at a young age. And I was hoping I was like anything other than just like boring white guy. And I was like Irish, European, normal stuff, I was hoping a little Mohican or something. And it was all really good. A lot of it, I got to find out a lot about medical stuff. Long story short, just kind of put it away, got a new phone, re-downloaded it, in March or something around there. And at that point, when I looked back at my family tree, there was like a whole left side that hadn't even existed on there before. And it was because I guess your cousins, my aunts, pretty much had a bunch of their family do 23andMe. And so it was, aunts and uncles and all these people. And then it was just these little gaps, and then like a great uncle or great grandpa or something. And then come down to like a gap right there next to my mom that was like biological father, and there was no name or anything to it. And I was kind of like, whoa, like, I did not expect this thing to potentially tell me that. Like, I was like, this guy's gonna freak out if he sees this. Like, the rest of the family's doing it. Like, it's only a matter of time before it trickles back. And so I, at first I was more kind of wanting to get ahead of it than anything else, because I didn't know if my mom had seen anything on there yet. And I wanted to know more about it. And so I reached out to the oldest person in the family I saw on that side, and was just kind of like, look, I am, I'm very well off. I'm okay. I'm, mentally there. Everything's fine. I don't want anything or need anything. And the last thing I need is more drama in my life. And so I don't want, if this person potentially is in a really hard place, or this is going to be something heavy for them, let's not tell them. Let's just you just act like I never reached out, no biggie, whatever. But if this person would be excited and it would be a benefit, then cool, let me know. Like, I would love to interact, know more about them, know if I need to worry about being bald or whatever it is, And then he just contacted the aunts and they contacted you, and yeah, we started talking, and it was really great because I think we were both kind of walking on eggshells, trying to like feel each other out, and I think both of us had the mindset that we weren't like looking to get anything out of one another or anything like that. And that's the normal kind of common fear. And
Right.
so with us also having never been raised together, we have a very similar reaction to struggles in life, and that we're like, fight or flight, and more often than not, or fight. And it's like, you lean into it and learn from that. And when you fail, you like, okay, I'm learning something in that process. And the same note of like wanting to seek to have bond, communication, and like connection with people, and being able to like have that, and being like vulnerable and humble and like 100% yourself. And if people like don't deal with it, then that's okay, because not everybody's gonna like it.
Yeah. So yeah, what's interesting about Justin's story and my personal story with my own dad, my real biological father left my brother and I when my mom and him got a divorce when I was 1. And I saw him like once a summer for a few times until I was 5. Then I never saw him again after I was 5 until we reconnected when I was a police officer in Dallas at 22. So however many years that is, like 22 or 17 years or something. Yeah, something like that. I hadn't seen my dad. I reached out to him and he just called me out of the blue, and then we kind of reconnected. My dad didn't have anything to do with raising me, but yet he and I had the same sense of humor. It's pretty weird how genetics and stuff work. And then you and I were kind of dumbfounded and relieved and happy, like, wow, and then like one of my cousins, like internet, Facebook stalked you and everything. And he's like, oh, he's got the same crazy sense of humor as you. Oh, he's got to be your son. And just to kind of fill in the gaps where Justin reached out to my uncle. My uncle's like old school, like, telling my cousins, his daughters, he's like, hey, one of my nephews has fathered a son and is reaching out to me, and I don't want anything to do with it. He goes, I don't know what to do. I'm not going to respond. I don't want to ruin lives. He's like, oh, and then just gave it to my cousin Susie's like, I'll take it. So she takes it. And then it was a really funny message that she left me. I was working out of Austin and I had to drive back, and she leaves me a message, and I didn't catch it. I was out on the floor doing something. And she says, in her message, she says, and like, we're close, but it's not like we talk that often. And it's like, yeah, my cousin Susie called me out of the blue. I got a message from her, right? It's not that rare. And hey, just seeing how you're doing, whatever. We always text birthdays, Christmas, all that stuff. But anyway, this message was, hey, Madge, cuz Sue, and no hurry to get back to me, but just kind of want to share something personal with you if you get a chance. And it's like, no hurry, don't get back to me, but it's of a personal nature, and get back to me. So immediately, like my drive home, I'm calling her. So then she spills the news. Hey, me and everybody did all this 23andMe, and like my brain's going, what the hell? And anyway, when it got to it, it was, okay, either my brother is your father and I'm your uncle, or I'm the father and he's the uncle. And it's like, well, I got to find out. So then I took the 23andMe. There's no denying, our little tree gap went whoop on the little, family tree connection, and you're my son. And it's been crazy. So Justin and I, we made it a priority for us to connect every week. And we started even filming some of these, like on Zoom calls. We started filming them so you and I would have some kind of memory back in the beginning stages of getting to know each other, and just kind of have a video, because in today's society and the technology and everything, thought that'd be pretty cool. And
yeah, absolutely.
The cool stuff is, I'm a safety guy now, safety, health, and environmental. Justin's in safety, health, and environmental as well. He's where I was, 15 years ago, getting up, and it's pretty cool being his pops and to be able to say, hey, let me share some documents with you or whatever else that might help you in your career. So pretty cool. I've been in martial arts. You taught kickboxing for a while. All these things, my cousins were like, oh my God, this is so perfect. You know, just geeking out. But man.
Yeah,
awesome.
it is. It is super interesting too. I mean, like you said it there, you had a similar path in like meeting your father later and everything too. And, you know, it's funny. I'm like, it just, like you said, genetics, it just goes to show, like, if you take two of like the same family people and you take a father figure away, like what do they lean towards and what do they go towards? And very much like we both went towards like, at least for me, kickboxing kind of fell into my lap, but it was like, if I know how to, I feel comfortable in defending myself and I can exude the confidence, then I won't have to deal with other people or other things. And I'll feel okay walking around there because I don't, you know, for whatever it is and that kind of thing. And yeah, I mean, being raised by a single mother, and I was in Texas for a little bit, but it was mainly in Galveston, and most of our family on that side is in Quitman. And when we moved out to Virginia, it was about 12 or 13 years before I ever came back to Texas to really see family. And so a lot of my like social like adaptations to the world were like not having family. I've been very used to like family not being a big priority for me other than just my mom. And we were like, the quote ride or die. We were like, we had each other, we knew where each other were. We were always like, I had pretty much free reign to do whatever because I was very like innocent, but I also was like too innocent to get into too much trouble because people that got into trouble were like, this guy's gonna get us caught, And so I was able to just, kind of live and enjoy and do all the things. And it was funny, I made family with so many other people's friends and families and all kinds of other things. And now it's interesting knowing like you're here on the other side of the family. I've been kind of like, oh, it is kind of nice. Just like, it's like you've got more of a priority, more people to reach out to, but then it's like, yeah, you don't get to choose your family. Kind of like, haha, you guys are stuck with me. Yeah, I am yours. Like anything you don't like, it's your fault. It's like we're all here together. Yeah. So yeah, and I've been really grateful. I think the recording part of it for me too is also getting to show the rest of the world like this isn't as big a deal as everybody makes it. We're just as like friendly and everything else and understanding and trying to do that. And, if you've potentially got a son out there or a dad out there or any parent you're worried about, like reach out, talk to them. This is, don't have that weight on your shoulders. There's no reason to. I didn't think it was going to be a big difference either way. And even now, it's nice. It's kind of funny to just be like, oh, I know this, I got this. I know I've got one person out there that will probably get it like more than most people, even though we don't know each other that well. Like I could say something and you would probably be like, I totally understand where you're coming from. Mm-hmm.
So it's, well, you've done stand-up comedy. I've done stand-up comedy. We've used humor to try to adjust and react and entertain and then also cope. We've used humor as a coping mechanism, and I think a lot of that too was growing up without a father. So it's really interesting to what we've learning from one another and getting to know one another and realizing the similarities versus the differences. And I think one of the greatest things about the Knight's Path podcast is all about interviewing men that are trying to become their most badass versions of themselves. And Justin's a perfect guest for that as well, because he's at this point in his life where he's like, hey, you did some really awesome free spirit stuff that not a lot of people get to do. And then you're like, hey, I have a career now. I'm starting to, but all of it has been in service to people, which is what I preach on the Knight's Path podcast is, I want to provide products and services that benefit humanity. Humor, to me, is a service. Laughter is good medicine, good for the heart. If I can bring joy to your point as well with this. And one reason we wanted to kind of record things is we're going through this. And this is kind of like, you're on the journey with us. And if there's anybody out there that's dealing with this, by all means, DM me or put comments down below and reach out. And you can reach out to me. You can reach out to Justin. I'll get us in touch, and we can help people work through it. It's not that bad. It's not that scary, and it is what it is. It's you can control how you react. It's weird talking to, I've probably revealed this to 4 buddies of mine, and each one of them reacts different as a man, and some of them, one of them was like, I started telling the story, and he's like, oh, I'm starting to feel sick. Where's this going? Where's this going? Because in his mind, he's sitting there remembering his past, and he's like, oh, if my past came up to haunt me, and then he's like worried about the monetary, how much money is he asking for? He's like, yeah, he's not asking for money. He just wants to get to know his dad, and then other buddies are like, man, that's badass. You have a son. Congratulations. They're all jacked up, excited for me. And then another buddy of mine's just thinking about the Rolodex of the people he'd been with in his life. He's like, well, what's funny is like, you're a man, you're a grown man, and you and I talked about this, and Justin was like very transparent in the beginning, and he was like, hey, I put myself in your shoes, and you're sitting here, commiserating with me going, if this happened to me, I would immediately think, how could that happen? I was so careful. And, that's exactly how I was. I was like, I was so careful, but it's amazing to be able to connect with you and have you as a guy, and, have Guy talk about this. It's pretty cool and kick ass.
Yeah. And I mean, it was, it's like such a random, spur of the moment situation too. I think from my mom's side of it, she had been told her whole life she couldn't get pregnant. And like, there's a lot more story to that I'm sure we can have for another podcast. But in the situation that it was, in her eyes was a miracle. And, I didn't really know that until all of this stuff kind of came out. And that kind of just like brought up more memories and other stuff. And she was kind of like, well, this is like really, and then it just brought out more of that. And I kind of realized, if you had told me, or if I had thought that, I was the miracle child, you weren't supposed to get pregnant or anything, I would have had like a way heavier weight on my shoulders at a younger age. And when I messed up and did all the things I did, I would have been like, well, of course, I'm not supposed to be here. Like, I'm not, yeah, whatever, blah, blah. And I would have leaned into that. And, the same note, maybe it would have pushed me more. But the fact that it came out when it did, just like you said, like, I've lived a very awesome, crazy, like adventurous life, like low quality of life for very high return and joy and like living in the moment. And now like trying to put a path, really like look and assess on how I've reacted to things and how to do that in a more effective and positive way and empathetic way to other people. And now like, okay, this thing that hasn't been there a part of my life that I never really felt was a big deal because I've managed to pull a lot of resources and father figures from other places and that kind of thing, and keep myself relatively grounded. And then to also be like, well, you're like a miracle, like too. Yeah, this is all crazy too. And then it was kind of like, oh man, like, all right, you know what? Like, this is kind of make, I was like, it's like, I have done some pretty crazy things compared to everybody else in a weird path and a direction, and have landed in a absolutely incredible spot in like some unbeknownst opportunities. And it is kind of, everybody's life is a miracle. Everything is an opportunity, but it kind of gave me a level of confidence or just excitement or gratitude or gratefulness for life that I hadn't had before. And it was really just a matter of me being like, hey, things are crazy, but like way better circumstances than you could have like ever imagined, And so I've been really grateful. I think one of the things that I've admired most is you have been on this path of, continuous improvement and always like trying to assess like how you've done things, especially physically and training and that kind of thing. And so much with, similar to kickboxing, you stick to the basics and then you get better at everything incrementally. And so taking what we got really good at teaching and training other people, and trying to put those philosophies and other stuff slowly. It's really hard. Like, oh, I wish I could write a sentence as good as I can throw a jab. Trust me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
I just need to write as many sentences as I do jabs. And so, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I want to get into some of the cool, because I was telling a buddy of mine, and he's super smart. He's a genius. He's a Sinia's godfather. So yeah, you have a half sister with my daughter. You know, y'all are half brother, half sister. But yeah, I was telling him, you know, there's so much that we know about each other, and it's like, you know, because my buddy, he lived on an Indian reservation for a while. And I'm like, oh man, my son, you know, was in this place and there's this cliff, and I was trying to remember where it was. And these two Native Americans came out and they gave him, like, you know, something that they had made, and he carried it with him, and it's like a good talisman charm. And I'm like, I got to ask him about that again. So I want to definitely talk about that. But I'm sure there's people that are dying to know, and my cousins were too. And I kind of want to hit on this, and then we can go into some of your cool, you know, adventurous American things that you've done, American male, you know, open field, wild nature, you know, all that cool stuff. But my cousins, you know, like one of them Facebook stalked you, very good at it. You know, it's sending me all these pictures and sending me pictures of your mom when she was younger. Like, do you remember her? Do you remember her? Does she look familiar? Do you remember her? And then, like, growing up, your mom had told you basically that she was walking. We were coming from a bar or someplace, and she was walking to the car. She saw me, and she said, "Hey, you're pretty cute." And I looked back at her and said, "Hey, you're pretty cute too." And then things happened, and it happened to be like this random night of romance, and we didn't know each other, and you're the result of that. And anything to add to that?
I mean, and it pretty much as it went down, it was, I mean, as a single parent, not knowing who the other parent is of your child at different ages as they ask, you can only tell them so much, you know what I mean? And so I had only asked, you know, a few times with very long gaps. So like when I was 15, I was like, last time I talked about this, I was like 5 years old. And so there was these different little gaps that I would get as I was older. And ultimately she had been with a guy for, you know, 2 or 3 years, and they kept, you know, being on and off, and we're breaking up and that kind of thing. He was like very disrespectful, like very toxic relationship kind of thing. And then they finally just like had this big breakup. He was super toxic about something, and they lived separately. And she was in Dallas, I think, at the time, and was just like, screw it, I'm gonna go out, and went out for a ladies' night. And like all she remembers is telling some tall guy he was cute. And then, you know, she woke up, felt like crap, realized she was pregnant, and pretty much went back to the guy that she had been with, and was like, because she was also, you know, having sex with him, and he was like, she was like, this could just as easily be yours. And his family was very much like no sex before marriage, everything. And he was like, even if it is mine, you have to get rid of it. It like, our family's not going to keep it, they're going to disown us, like blah blah blah. And she was like, what? Like, you've been doing this just as much as like everybody. Like this is, you know. And she was like, I'm also not supposed to get pregnant. This is like a crazy miracle. Like, I'm keeping it. My mom was 90 pounds. She was like super tiny. And the doctors in Texas were like, you're going to die. Like, they're not. And like, she was at the age, like, she was like, I think like 18 or 19. And she was super tiny. And by the time she had started to go see doctors, they were like refusing to see her because they said she was going to die giving birth to me, and they didn't want to have like her death on their docket or whatever it was. And it was just super crazy. So eventually, like 6 months into her like actually being pregnant, she finally started to get a doctor. But at that point, the guy that she had been with got a blood test after I was born. It came back negative. And from that point on, it was just, you know, she's doing her own thing. And she, you know, she realized, she was like, I'm not going to, you know, hunt down somebody that I just very obviously told I was going to have a one-night thing with or whatever. And in the same note, like if I were told at 18 that I were like infertile, I would probably very rarely use protection, other than like when I wanted to make sure I tested or something. I'm pretty good about protection and being tested and all those things, but that's more of like, I was grown up. Like, I don't want me to screw up, you know? And so, But yeah, I mean, it's been great because I think at a younger age, it was more difficult not having father figure stereotypical stuff. But it was so easy for me to join in on other people's family things and that kind of stuff. And then it made me, I mean, immensely stronger mentally, just in terms of like resilience and realizing that life isn't as fluffy as dads make it. You know, dads protect you from a lot mentally and physically. And like, even when they're nitty gritty and they're kind of assholes and all that stuff, it helps you kind of be like, well, but that's just dad. Like, that's just how dad is. And like, that's the world. Like, the world is hard. It's not easy. And like, so it's full of love and amazing things, but it's good and the bad. Like, you can't have the good without the evil. Like, you have gotta have the reason I like dark humor is because if you can go to the darkest humor, that means that you can appreciate the smallest things in the world as well. It means you can just be happy that there's dew on the grass in the mornings and you're like, this is a really nice feeling. You know, if you're just upset about other small stuff, it's just, you can't enjoy that.
Yeah, I use dark humor, and there was one guy on my podcast that I interviewed, Shane Eastman, and he was a medic over in desert, over in the sandbox, and they in the medical field they had to have to deal with dark humor because they saw some horrific crap, and they're working on people and stuff like that, and we certainly at police work, you saw horrible things, and you just had this gallows humor, this dark humor to try to deal with it, because otherwise it was heartbreaking and break your heart, and you'd want to just go crawl in a corner and hug your knees and friggin' cry. It was heart wrenching, but yeah, but same thing, it's I'm missing something. So like when you would do stand up and stuff, you would almost. Hey,
I don't know if I ever did it. I attempted.
Oh, okay. But like, hey, let me tell you about my dad. Don't have one, or people would, you would kind of use that, right?
Yes, because that's the joke is go in and I just tell how amazing my mom is. Really, like, authentically go in, and I kind of at a point where I look at the audience and I realize they're like, what is he getting on about? And I'll be like, well, I'll tell you all the best advice my dad gave me. And you just wait for the crowd, and they're like, oh, I get it. All right, yeah. And so, but that is like, yeah. And it was funny. I remember when one of the funny like things, I was like, damn it, I know who my dad is. I can't make these jokes anymore. Like,
Right.
So no, it's good though. It's it's funny. Like, yeah, it's exactly how we cope and adjust and deal with that stuff. Like you said, I am all about reaction. I don't really care too much about the content. I would like to see how people react to it. It's great if you can get the joke to work perfectly and seamlessly, but I love to lead people one way and they're like, oh my gosh, that's so dark.
Yeah. So let's talk about your adventurous life, and then let's definitely. So like, you've done some crazy stuff. You were a cook. You've been some crazy places, and then let's talk about these.
So like, I'll really preface it this way. I out of high school realized that I wanted to travel, and I heard about Doctors Without Borders. I was not going to go to school to be a doctor for that long. I was going to do Nursing Without Borders. I started going to community college here in Charlottesville, and it's like PVCC, one of the best community colleges for nursing in the country. Started doing it about a year and a half in, realized I couldn't deal with blood, and I was like, oh my gosh, well, this is a bad career path, so I'll do something else. Found a program called WOOFing, which is Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms, WWOOF, pretty much housing and food for labor, depending on if you set it up right. Some places don't do it, some people pay you, so it's still a different setup. But really easy way to travel if you're just looking to do a little labor and do some cheap stuff, meet some cool people. And it's all over the world. So I did that out in California. I had realized after I got out of nursing school that I was just surviving. I was just paying rent. I was like just day to day. And I was like, if I do that, I could do this anywhere. Like, why would I stay where I'm at? I was like, screw it. I'll just spend $600, go across the country and do it there. And it was a new place, a new challenge, new different things to figure out. And went out there to California, whooped at a few different farms, pretty much had $200 left in my name, bought a Greyhound bus ticket back to Charlottesville, Virginia, went from Sacramento, California, all the way back to Charlottesville, Virginia, came back out here, started working in restaurants, fell in love with farm to fork because I've been doing that, fell in love with kitchen culture and like the cynicism in it and like the nitty gritty. The last 30 minutes, you got to do all your work because that's when everybody comes in and you're cleaned. And it was this camaraderie and the passion of it, and the ability to like make someone remember like a memory from being able to cook is like such a powerful thing. I fell into love with that. Worked at some really nice high-end restaurants. Word got out that I was a cook and that I'd been out west, so I got hired out from Knowles in Wyoming. Worked at a ranch for 6 months, room and board for like a wilderness EMT course, making pretty much like cafeteria food for like 4 or 5 months in the wilderness, in the woods in like a cabin. I had a husky at the time, so it was like perfect. Pretty much once that was done, I stayed out there for as long as I could. I worked in a bakery, and then eventually was mowing some lady's lawn. A guy was doing, he was pretty much telling her how much it was going to cost to cut her trees down. And I was like, how do I work for you? So I found out I could get paid to climb trees. I pretty much was like becoming a certified arborist. I learned how to climb and cut them down from the top down, that kind of thing. And then I was engaged to a woman that was like 12 years older than me. And she was absolutely amazing and stunning, but also did not realize that we had very different values and that she wanted to have kids in a time span that I was not going to be financially comfortable bringing them into our world, especially with where we were at financially. There's a lot of different red flags with that. And long story short, our engagement kind of broke off, and I was like, well, Wyoming is desolate. And so I literally just popped down to Colorado, bummed it on my buddy's couch for like 2 days before I found a job bouncing. And then 3 days after that, got a job at a kickboxing studio before they opened. And I got sent to New York for training for like a weekend and a half. And then pretty much 4.5 months of training in a basement with like 4 really intelligent, crazy athletic women that were like amazing at sales, and learned how to kickbox with them. And then we just opened a studio out there and pretty much ran it for a year and a half. And then everybody kind of slowly dropped off or did other things. And I was just wanting to do it somewhere else. So I went to Memphis and kickboxed, loved it. Horrible infrastructure for where I was at, just in terms of biking and like travel and other things like that. I just wasn't my hobbies weren't there. So then came back to my hometown in Charlottesville and ran into an old high school football coach, started slinging solar panels on roofs for a company. And 4 months later, they doubled in size, and the safety guy needed somebody to help. And he had seen that I had coached and that I enjoyed doing that. And so I went from teaching females how to appreciate their bodies to teaching construction workers how to appreciate theirs. And it is much harder.
Yeah.
But love it. It's fun. In the end of the day, my job is keeping people safe. Yep. And then no matter what, if it sucks, they're putting solar on roofs and in fields and keeping things slightly better than us just digging a hole and burning it. So
yeah,
there's lots of controversy and all that. And I'm sure we'll get it in the comments, but whatever.
Yes, no, I love that. I love that highline and like, arborist and cook, and no, that's fantastic. It's an amazing free spirited story. And yeah, then you met your dad, and now you're in the safety field, and it's crazy. So what was it? So tell me about that one spot where it's super cold, but there's this rock face where people rock climb, and you met those 2 Native Americans, and then they gave you something. That's pretty cool.
So yeah, I had moved out to Wyoming, and in Wyoming, there are some of the like original longest standing Native American reservations out there. And it's a really large chunks of the state are Native American reservations. And there's, obviously different types of funding and that kind of stuff, but it is a really rough system that they have for a lot of people out there. And the infrastructure kind of helps keep people trapped in a lot of situations, and there's not as much money in education and that type of thing. And so obviously there's people working and ways to go around stuff, but there's a lot of stereotypes about Native Americans out there. And long story short, I had moved out there, maybe been out there. I had gone through the few months of being pretty much a chef, cafeteria style at the wilderness EMT course, moved to a main town where most people were at, and was just sitting at a bar grabbing a drink, and was just sitting next to 2 Native American guys, started catching up with them. They were brothers. And what was funny is I can kind of tell there were like dirty looks from people towards these guys. And from where I'm at, that was very much like, if I've ever seen anybody getting those looks, those are the people that like I want to sit with and be with and understand, because I don't have any issues with them, and I will find out if they have issues with me pretty quickly, and then I will understand maybe why those other things are there. But most of the time, I find that it's other people just being happy. Not like, you know, I want to figure that out. So talking with them, they're just two guys, you know, that live on the reservation. They work in town and do other stuff and that kind of thing. Really, really nice. And I was just an outsider that had come in and was treating them just as equally as everyone else. And they were like being like blown away and dumbfounded that I was like even wanting to conversate and like was asking these questions. And they took me, I had not been in the town yet. It's called Lander, Wyoming. And there's it's not Glacier National Park, but there's a national park or a state park just outside of Lander, about 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And it's a huge cavern that's massive. And like thousands of years ago, it used to be a big glacier. And as it melted, it slowly like carved this huge hole out of the mountain pretty much. And it's such a big side that on one side of the mountain, the sun hits it like 360 days out of the year, and it is about 70 degrees on the rock. So it can be like 10 below, and you can rock climb on the rock in like shorts and a t-shirt. Wind is typically an issue, but that's like it's sunny and people rock climb year round. In that, there is like this massive hole where it just disappears into the mountain. And so you walk down these crazy flights of stairs, and these Native Americans are taking me down, and they're telling me this story, and they're explaining like the lay of the land and how this happens. And they take me to this spot, and there's this massive, it just like looks like a hole, and you just see water like rushing down this mountain and disappearing into this thing. And they're like, this goes about 3 miles down is where the water starts to let out. And they do not know where this water, how it gets from here to there. And they've like done water dye, they've put all kinds of stuff in the water, different things and all this stuff. But it goes from like this very swimmable thing to like a tiny little hole super fast. And super crazy stuff. They're telling me all about that. They're showing me this wall. And when you go out to Wyoming, it's just fields of sage, just wild sage. And it's just massive. And it's really, really cool. And they were telling me just about the land and how we've gotten past the fact of socially they weren't accepted and all these different things and how hard it was. And they just started sharing to me a little bit about their culture and the lay of the land. And they pretty much took me, you know, the two brothers, they hadn't been together in a while. So I could also, they were just like exchanging stories. And so getting to hear them kind of get excited about these native childhood stories that they didn't get to share with people, and them being like, oh, but don't forget this, bro. And like, they would say these things, and they literally like cut some pieces of sage off. We like sat and looked up at this huge, like massive side of the mountain, and they're doing a ritual. They're kind of saying these native things, and they burn some of the sage, and it's like this really beautiful thing. And like, they're kind of like waving it over me. They're waving over themselves. And like, I got this like really huge sense of wonder. And when I first went out to Wyoming was when I had started to be like, there may be a bigger deity out there. Like, this is incredible, you know? And so that was all really beautiful. One of the brothers like gave me his like paracord like band that he had for years and years. The other brother gave me like this amazing like hunting knife that was like, he had obviously been worn and beaten in, and they were both like giving it to me, and they were both like crying about giving it to me. And it was just like really this beautiful moment and super powerful to have been like included and accepted into that. And yeah, and then it was just this, it kind of had instilled in me to not allow the rest of Wyoming to, don't get lost in Wyoming, and remember that that's still okay. Because definitely by the time I left, I definitely had a different idea of natives than when I started out there. And it was a lot of just like poor interactions with specific people, you know, and like not chalking that up to everybody and that kind of thing. And having that experience really made me be like, I'm not going to make you be the voice for the rest of your people. Like there are way cooler people I met out there. Like don't act like that. So.
No, that's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. I remember you even shared some more details, that I hadn't remembered or you hadn't shared in the first telling of that tale. So I appreciate that. The hole with the water point, that's pretty cool. But yeah, I tried as a young man, and I was raised by my mom primarily, my brother and I, great woman, worked her ass off, instilled some really great values into my brother and I. And my uncle and my cousins influenced my aunt, Linda and Uncle Tim and Susie and Amy. Great folks as well, but and a lot of really good lessons. But yeah, I always tried to not listen to other people. Like, especially when I was a police officer, there might be some officer that had a beef with another officer, and it was like, oh, don't talk to that guy, he's an asshole. And I was like, well, he's not an asshole to me, and until he's an asshole to me, I'm going to treat him with the respect he's showing me. So that was something. It didn't matter, race and color and all that, religion, all that other crap. It's like I'll try to, until I'm, wounded by this person, I'll just, keep the relationship. So that's a good lesson for everyone to hear there. So, and one of my buddies asked me this when I have a Dallas police buddies that we have a happy hour every other Friday, and we had it last night. Today's Saturday. We're having our podcast, and I was telling him about you. And one of my buddies he's Billy D. He's actually the first guy, episode 1 podcast. He was like, so your son, he's like you're a Kelly, and you got all this Irish stuff going on, and he goes, does Justin have a propensity for Irishness and stuff like that? And I was like, well, and I showed him a picture that you had sent me, or my cousins had sent me, stalking you, that had like a Patty's Irish bar T-shirt, on, and I think it was a Pennsylvania bar, and it said the worst bar, and whatever. It's pretty funny. Or was it? Okay. But I said, you can fill in the gaps too. But what I told him was, like, in one of our first texts, I was like, you come from strong Irish blood, son. And then you're like, oh, is that why I have so much fun doing the Irish accents, right? So, yeah. So I guess you've kind of been a ham, and you like doing the Irish accents?
Yeah, definitely. Especially if I get inebriated and start into an Irish accent. If I hit a certain level and I use the Irish accent, it is very difficult for me to not use it. And I've always loved accents in general, but the Irish one specifically is just a really, really easy one. If you want to insult someone or say something that's not as nice, if you do it in an Irish accent, people take it with a grain of salt.
Right. No, that was going to be one of my comedy bits too, is you can get away with so much with an accent versus being just some crude American with the American accent. You're going to get punched in the face. But if you do it in the right accent, but it has to be the right accent, because, you could say British accent and, oh, you sound so smart with a British accent. Well, it depends on the accent. It's like, hi, lady, how would you and me like to hook up tonight and get to bed? It's like, ew, that's a horrible accent, right? But if you say, we'll get into some accents later, and we'll try to do it sober, maybe when we're doing the limericks. So that's another thing. Like Justin and I have this father-son weekly limerick. So we each will write a limerick, and we're going to do this weekly. And we're on week 3 right now, and we'll probably share the limericks with you on this episode, and then who knows what we'll do with it. We're going to do this for at least a year, and we're going to have there's 52 weeks in a year, so there'll be 104 limericks, and we will maybe have a coffee table book or a limerick book you can look at while you're taking a crap, and you can set it down, put it away, open it up, read some more limericks. Maybe that'll be volume 1. We'll do volume 2. Maybe we'll host a contest, the Great American Limerick Contest. The sky's the limit. So we'll get into the limericks later too. But most of my guests, I ask, what do you do physically, mentally, and spiritually to be the most badass version of yourself? And I know you stayed in shape. You're recently doing paddle boarding. You and I've talked about your spirituality and trying to meditate and stuff in different times in your life. So just kind of walk us through at a high level, physically, mentally, and spiritually, what you do to become the most badass version of yourself on a daily basis and grow. And I know that you're doing the daily stoic, and I see that on your Instagram, and I love that. It's awesome reflection. But yeah, walk us through that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say this has definitely been something that I've been putting a lot of thought into in the past 2 to 3 years. And then obviously COVID expedited a lot of personal growth for a lot of people. So that was a really big focus, was trying to figure out where my values lie and why. First assessing where my values had lied just by my actions, realizing that my actions were not reflecting the values that I wanted, and changing those to pretty much, I need to read more and I need to be more physical. And then, as much as I like dark humor and cynicism, I need to spend more time. So I ultimately have been reading the Daily Stoic in the mornings when I can. I try to remember, I have it there next to my bed as much as possible. Otherwise, I'll forget. Some days I do forget. The Daily Stoic, and then it's really trying to wake up in the least chaotic mindset possible. So whatever that means, I attempt to do a Monday, Wednesday, Friday run crew. I have been really bad about that for a couple months, but that's, I've woken up and decided that it was going to be more stressful for me to do that than it was for me to not do that. I still woke up early and I still was up during that time, but I was able to prepare myself for work or for other business trips or training coming up, instead of force myself to do this run that I told myself was for my mental health and then be more stressed about something later. So really trying to balance like being realistic about where I'm at when I say things. We often say that we want to make plans, and then when they come up, you're like, oh, I don't actually have the energy now to do it. And that's like, you force yourself to go and do those things. And I've been really good about setting those boundaries with myself and being realistic. So that's been a main part of my mental. And then aside from that, I've got the kickboxing bag right here and all the skateboards and everything else. So I've got the paddleboard, the skateboards, the kickboxing stuff. I've got soccer ball, basketball, disc golf stuff. I've got badminton net. I've got 2 different tents, like 3 or 4 different hammocks. So when I don't feel like I'm growing or doing, I go and put myself in awkward situations and I attempt to grow and change. And a lot of times that'll go hand in hand with kickboxing and skateboarding. Like if you go fast, it's really hard to think about other things that aren't that big a deal. So it kind of brings you in the moment of like, I need to focus in on this and have my flow. And so that's been a big part of it. I started building and doing carpentry stuff. I built a platform for sleeping in my car and all kinds of different things. So yeah.
So So you built some Viking chairs that are like stargazers, right? They're 2 pieces of wood, which is pretty cool. You showed me those, and then so kind of the thought behind the bed in the car that you're making is just so you can, if that wanderlust hits you, you can just pack up, go, reboot, be in nature, and all that good stuff, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Sweet, that's good. I love nature. So awesome. All right. Thanks for walking us through that. So let's talk about kind of next steps for you, as far as maybe where do you see, now I'll have you on the podcast again. Oh, that was one thing I'll kind of talk about too real quick is for folks out there, is when Justin and I were getting ready to, we knew each other, we were getting ready to, or starting to know each other more. I have a lot of YouTube content out there, not tons, not hundreds, but I had, 50, 60 videos out there, and I could start throwing some videos his way and say, hey, well, I'm out there, and I don't know if this is going to turn you off or turn you on, but hey, here's a St. Patty's Day song I wrote, and I threw that St. Patty's Day Jameson Irish whiskey song your way, a couple other things, and you were like, love it, and I'm like, oh, thank God, But you and I made a pact. It's 2021. in July. It's right before America's birthday. It's the 3rd. And you and I have made a pact that we're going to do a duet of the Jameson Irish Whiskey song for March 17th, 2022. Right?
That's right.
Yeah, hell yeah. We'll do it with our Irish accents, and we might be a little, might have had a nip of the Irish to warm us up. Warm up our golden adenoids, so to speak. All right. But so you and I've kind of talked about this. What are you thinking as far as like your presence, or maybe you creating a YouTube channel, and what kind of content you want to put out there? Because I may just give you all the raw material that we've filmed so far, and if you want to share it, you can. I mean, I certainly can. But what are you thinking you want to do, and how you want to impact and maybe communicate? Because you're such an interesting guy. If you weren't my son, you're interesting as hell. I'd want to have you on the podcast anyway. So
thank you. Yeah, it's something I've been trying to nail down for a bunch of years, and recently have just been told that I have a very good investigation mind, and that I like to dig into things or attempt to ask the right questions. And I really do enjoy human connection. So I think if anything, it would be something based off of that. I have so many different trades and skills and different stuff I enjoy doing, and I love coaching, but I think I don't know if there's any way to specifically nail it down in terms of our stuff. I'd love to have our stuff just be out there for the basic fact of showing other people that it is normal and okay, and then us regularly still meeting goes to show the changes and other stuff. I'm sure it's not going to all be peaches and rainbows and everything too, and so that'll be good for people to see that that's the case as well. Aside from that, I mean, honestly, my first thought is just to make really ridiculous YouTube videos, like prank videos and other stupid stuff, but more realistically, it would most likely be safety content and or coach or kickboxing style stuff. I used to do these when COVID first happened. I would do these news announcements on Mondays for my company just to kind of keep morale high, and I would go through events that happened in history this week and weather and that kind of stuff, and it'd all just be little puns and fake jokes and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I enjoy connecting and talking with people. I like seeing your podcast and you just kind of talking and hearing people's stories. So something similar to that. I think I want to go old school with it though, and I'll have a mini leather bound books and mahogany in a room with candles. It'll be scotch and cigars, and let it be please come out. Yeah, and it'll be yeah, at that point it'd be let's make a night of it. Yeah, let's get the Monopoly man involved.
And you'll have a big, Sherlock's home pipe and
right, exactly.
Blowing smoke rings, and yeah, that's awesome. Burgundy robe or whatever. That's awesome. Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. So just for the world as well, for the world to know is, I do have an LLC, and I do have a website. It's going to be down in the description. I do have a safe lifting program. So if you as an individual or you as a company want to hire my son and I as consultants to come teach your folks how to lift safely, absolutely do, because I'm 52. I'm not getting any younger. And it's pretty cool that, I created this, no shit $1 million safe lifting program for a company I worked for in-house. In the first 12 months it was in existence, it saved the company $1 million in work comp costs. So my son and I are going to collab on that. And, that's something where, and again, that's a product or service that benefits humanity. You only got one body, you only got one back. You got to take care of it the rest of your life. So, I sent you some safety stuff. I'm going to throw that one your way as well. I want you to look at it. You've got a good young mind, and, let's make it the most badass, impactful, safe lifting program out there to help people. So yeah, we got that going on. So yeah, I love that. All right. Is it limerick time?
Yeah, I think it's limerick time, and then I gotta shoot. That's it. All right.
So I mean, how do we want to do this? Because so when we did the limerick, it was basically I did one and then he did one, and then we were like every week, and Justin would actually like film his for me, and then I would do like a recording because I haven't figured out how to film and text without taking up too much video. You got an iPhone, I think, right? And I got an Android, whatever. But anyway, we're having a blast with this, and this is just a teaser for you, world. This is just a teaser from Justin and I to you. You're just getting 6 limericks, 3 apiece. I'll do one and you do one. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, let me make sure I grab my others. Yeah, I will. I'm gonna read 2 because the second one I don't necessarily want out there.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you're just gonna read 2. Yeah, I got it. Sneak peek for me. So yeah, there may be limerick 2 private.
Right. Yeah, that'll be special release a few years from now when I know it won't cause as much drama.
There you go. All right. So limerick number 1 for me, and this was just kind of to set the stage for the limericks, and then also our story. But anyway, here we go. A fine young man I recently met, full grown he was and mentally set. Then 23andMe, an apple from my tree, catch up 'twill we do, so there be no regret. Boom! Mic drop.
Oh yeah. All right. I'll attempt to do mine in the Irish accent as well. Both set on not being a bother. I recently met my biological father. We have yet to grow old, yet our jokes are still gold. Now let's see if his blood can thin out my armor.
Woo! Son. All right. Here's number 2. And this talks about the contest. A contest was born to create limericks. My opponent, the brilliant young Justin Hicks, was decided on a whim to do it for a grin. If no winner we had, 'twas done just for kicks. Boom!
That's it? Yes!
Yes!
All right.
All right.
And you want to do your third one and then I'll do my third one? Or I can just do my,
Yeah, we'll end with you. So here's and you haven't heard this one. This is all
the new one.
So yeah, World Wide Web, you're getting it fresh, first, and raw. All right. So in the past, I was a mover and a shaker. Fought 5-on-1 and lived. I'm a fighter, not a faker. I put 3 of the 5 to sleep. The last 2 ran like sheep and used but one technique, my drunken left haymaker. Boom!
Nice. I like that. That's pretty good.
Thank you.
Right,
Thank you.
That's my third one. Here we go. This one's you might have to bleep out the last word of this one. There once was a rat with a stick who could swing it like a real prick. One day in the house, his stick caught a mouse. Then we realized the rat had a dick.
We're not bleeping that out, man. That's like Nantucket-ish, right? Everyone knows the Nantucket-ish. So man, that's fantastic. I think kind of ending on the limericks is a badass, first volume for our first podcast together. Let the world get to know us a little bit. And hey, everybody, reach out to either one of us. Is it cool if I I know you have a private Insta. Do you want me to?
You can put my Instagram out there. Yeah, Instagram and Facebook, honestly, both. You'll have to request, but I will most likely accept all those out there. The reason that's like that is just for spam.
Yeah. Okay. So I will put Justin's stuff out there. Reach out to him. Reach out to me. Anyone with the 23andMe, if you want to sponsor the podcast, we'll be your spokespeople.
Advertisements for you guys. That would be great.
Yeah, but it's not that scary, folks. It's pretty amazing, pretty incredible, and I've met an amazing young man who happens to be my son, and it's freaking badass. I love it. So cool. All right, peace out, everyone. Justin, thank you. We'll stay in touch like we always do, and we'll just keep creating gifts for the world.
That's right. I appreciate it. See you, man. Have a good one.